Well, hello. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I'm not bringing a sermon to you in this video, although I do have a message for you, but it's a message about what we're doing and how we're doing it to reopen our church after the long shutdown. I am so excited. I'm sure you've heard by now that this coming Sunday, May the 10th, we're planning to have 2 morning worship services, one at 9:30 and one at 11. And I'm happy to share with you that 128 people have registered for each service for a total of, 256 people. That's wonderful. That's better than I expected. And the ones who have told me that they're coming, and I've talked to, have all expressed how excited they are that at last we finally get to be together as a church, at least better than we have been for the last 8 weeks. And I want to encourage you to read this week's update, the COVID-19 update on our church website. I would say that that document is one of the most important and informative pieces of communication that we have ever produced in our church. And it's really not an overstatement because it's going to explain to you where we're going from here. And I encourage you to read through that. It's only a couple of pages. But I want to run through some of that with you now because, as I said, I just want to talk with you a few moments now as your pastor to explain to you what we're doing to reopen our church, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it the way that we are. I want you to be fully informed. We're taking some extraordinary measures to ensure the safety, or at least I guess you can't ensure anything like that, but we're going to do the best we can to protect the safety and health of our people and all those who attend our church. Among those steps that we're taking is we've eliminated some standard features from our morning worship service. For example, we're not going to have the fellowship meet and greet time. That's going away because obviously that would violate the social distancing restrictions. We're not going to have a pass the plate offering because that would make it necessary for you to touch an offering plate that possibly dozens of other hands have handled. And so instead of that, we're going to have 4 offering boxes placed at the exits that you can use to just deposit your offering in as you leave the service. We won't have our regular invitation or response time as we normally do because that would be impossible with the social distancing restrictions that we're having to deal with. I couldn't get close enough to a person for them to speak quietly to me at the altar, and the counseling would be an issue. So we're going to, for a while, have to approach that a little bit differently. And when you take all of that away, that is going to mean that the service may be a little shorter than it normally is. It may be closer to 45 minutes. It can go for up to an hour, but just expect that it may be a little briefer than what you're normally accustomed to at our church on Sunday morning. I want to also mention that we'll have hand sanitizer available for you to use as you feel that you need to. And I want to encourage you, let's all practice the social distancing guidelines, the 6 foot apart rule and so forth, in the interest of doing all we can to protect one another from this virus. As I've said recently, the virus is not just going away like that. Obviously, it's gradually subsiding, and we're not going to wait until the coast is totally clear and there's no threat whatsoever before we meet again. And so in the meantime, we're having to take a few extra steps to ensure all of our safety. And as I'm talking about all of these special measures that we're taking, you may feel comfortable coming to church without all of these precautionary measures in place. You may feel that it's all overkill. And believe me, I totally get that. I understand. But we have to remember that there are those who would feel very uncomfortable coming to church if restrictions like that were not in place. And we just want to do all we can to avoid causing anyone to feel uncomfortable attending our church or unsafe. And so that's why we're going to the lengths that we are. I want to share with you that we are exploring the possibility of a third Sunday worship service. Not this Sunday, May the 10th, but possibly starting on May the 17th or even thereafter. And I emphasize the word possibly. This is not an announcement of something we're definitely going to do. What we are going to do, and before I explain how we're going to approach it and make the decision, let me tell you why we're thinking about doing it. We have begun to realize that as the summer approaches and as businesses in South Carolina begin to open up and restaurants and so forth, and people begin more and more to get out and about, more and more of our people may feel comfortable coming to church. And the two services, 9:30 and 11, that we're scheduled for this coming Sunday are both near capacity. And again, we don't want to turn anyone away, and so we want to open up the possibility of a third service to accommodate even larger attendances down the road. And the way that we're going to test the need for that is we're going to ask that you fill out one more questionnaire. We had one last week for this coming Sunday, and we're posting a second questionnaire that includes questions about the possible 5 o'clock service for May the 17th, and it should be posted as of Friday at the latest. It may already be posted today. And it's going to ask if you would be interested in attending a 5 o'clock service if we were to make one available. And we'll take the responses to that and we'll tabulate them and we'll look at the feasibility of having a 5 o'clock service. Do we even need to have one? Do we need to start one down the road as more and more people begin to want to attend the church? We'll keep that possibility open for as long as we need to. I want to say that adding a third service is challenging because when you add a service, you know, our church has for the longest time now been set up for only one Sunday morning worship service. And all of our teams who do their thing on Sunday morning are set up around that one service schedule. When we start adding services, that means you have to ask ushers, musicians, our response team to cover 2 and maybe even 3 services, and that's a lot to ask of people, especially if this if this situation is we're required to continue it out, stretch it out into the summer or even into the fall or who knows how long. But we feel that it is important enough to make room for everybody that we're willing to make those adjustments, and we will do all we can. We'll go to all great lengths to provide up to 3 services if we need to for attendance, because we want everyone to have a chance to come and worship at Crowfield Baptist Church. Let me just ask you to pray with me about that. If we find that we begin to have the need for additional volunteers to help with some of these responsibilities, would you pray with me that God will raise those people up so that those needs can be met? We know that God, He's the Lord of the harvest, and He can raise up laborers for His harvest field, and we're going to trust Him to do that. Now, whether or not we add a third service, we're going to set up an online registration process. Like I said, we're asking for this week that you fill out one more questionnaire for May the 17th. You fill the questionnaire out this week, and it will inform us about what to do for May the 17th. But beyond that, we're going to have a registration process. What that means is every Sunday you will need to go online to our church's website and register for whichever service, 9:30, 11, or possibly even 5 p.m., that you want to attend. And it will be on a first-come, first-served basis, and it will be open to members of our church and also guests. And the way it will work is it will start on the registration for each upcoming Sunday worship service will begin on noon on Wednesday of the previous week. And it's, like we said, it's first come, first served. So when, say, for example, the 9:30 service fills up to capacity at that point, then the registration for that service will disappear off of the website, and you'll have to choose another service to attend. And if you don't have a computer or access to the internet, feel free to call in to our church office. And extension 10 is Mandy Denton, my administrative assistant, and she'll be in charge of taking phone call registrations for worship attendance. Now, we do ask that if at all possible you registered your attendance online rather than calling, because otherwise we're going to blow up our telephones. And of course, Mandy can only answer one phone call at a time, and so the phone calls can easily back up. Whereas online, multiple people can be registering for the same service at the same time. So if possible, register online. And of course, the reason why we're doing this registration thing is in the interest of keeping the attendance at each of our services close to that 20% maximum that our governor has requested of us. And we have to spread the attendance out, and the only way that we know to do that in the long term is to use the registration process. The registration for May 24th will begin on Wednesday, May the 20th at noon, and it will open up for each subsequent Sunday on the Wednesday of the previous week. You know, thinking about all of this, it comes down to two main objectives that we on the staff have. Number one, I've already mentioned, we don't want to turn anyone away from our church. We will go to extraordinary lengths to make it possible for everyone who wants to attend Crowfield Baptist Church to do so. And our second objective is we want everyone to feel as comfortable and safe as possible attending a church. And we understand that a lot of people, especially persons who are immune compromised, are going to be looking for these precautionary measures to be in place before they commit to attend. And in the interest of their comfort and their sense of safety, we want to make those, take those steps and put those measures in place. Now, as for Sunday morning Bible study, I believe in Sunday school. I was raised on it, and I know that a lot of churches are doing away with Sunday school today. A lot of the newer churches have home groups and things, and that's fine, and it's working for a lot of churches. But I believe that Sunday morning Bible study has some advantages for small group ministry and discipleship that no other discipleship small group program I've ever seen offers. And so I'm committed to it. And it concerns me that we're having to leave Sunday morning Bible study shut down for as long as we are. We are going to look at every possible way of resuming some or all of our Sunday morning Bible study classes, including training some of our teachers or all of our teachers that want to do it to offer their lessons online. There are some different programs, Zoom and some other things that can be utilized to that are just perfect for a small group to come online together and have a virtual Bible study experience. And some of our teachers are already doing that. I know of at least one class that's doing it. Some of our other teachers probably aren't as familiar with that technology, and we're going to be doing some training and making people aware and making that option possible. And we'll look at ways that maybe we can even bring some of our classes on campus, but We don't know of how that would work at this point. There are no concrete plans as of the taping of this video for us to resume Sunday morning Bible study. But I just want you to know that we will do all we can to get that ministry up and running as soon as we can within the restrictions of social distancing. Also, I have for years taught a ministry that we call Equip on Wednesday nights. And I'm looking at the possibility of resuming Equip in the worship center on Wednesday nights in the near future. I think we could spread out adequately in the worship center, given the average attendance that we've had in the past. We have the big screens that we can use to project any video studies we do. And I may be doing that before long. We'll see. But we don't have any plans to resume any other ministries at this time on Wednesday night. But if any of that changes at any point, we're going to keep you posted. I just want to take a moment to thank you for supporting these measures that we're taking to get our church open and up and running again. We have felt so much support from our church family, and numerous people have phoned in or even written notes and cards and letters telling us that they're praying for us, those of us who are on staff. And we have just felt an outpouring of support as we've struggled with how to deal with these unprecedented times for churches and for everyone else that we're living in right now. I also want to thank you for continuing to give financially to our church. Our offerings have held strong throughout the entire shutdown, and we're in the black today as a church, and I thank you for your faithfulness and financial stewardship. That has enabled our church to avoid the financial crisis that many other churches are facing today. And I just want to take a moment to express to you my appreciation as your pastor for that support and for continuing to give as you have. Acts chapter 2 tells the story of the birth of the first church, the church at Jerusalem. And verse 44 of Acts 2 is one of the first statements that the book of Acts makes about that church. And it says this: all the believers were together. And I believe that physical togetherness is at the heart of what makes a local church what it is. As opposed to what we call parachurch ministries, Christian organizations that are not churches. What's the difference between those and a local church? Well, I think one of the major differences is a church is a group of people who are together. And we know that we're living in times right now when our full togetherness just hasn't been possible. But I believe that the togetherness of a church is a large part of the glue that holds that family of Christians together. And you take that glue away long enough and the cohesiveness of the entire church becomes threatened. And that's why I and all of us on staff are highly motivated to get us together, at least in smaller groups, as soon as possible. And I miss you, and I miss seeing your face on Sunday and on Wednesday night, and hugging your neck and shaking your hand. And we won't be doing any neck hugging or handshaking for a while, but at least we will be able to be together in these multiple services and some of these other things we hope to be doing. Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorite characters in history, and he gave a speech before he became the 16th president. And in the speech, he told the story of a king that advised his wise men to come up with a sentence that would always be true in every circumstance and that would always be appropriate. And the wise men had got together and thought about it, and they came back, and here's the sentence they offered their king: "This too shall pass away." Now think about how true that is. The king nodded and said, "That's it." And Lincoln acknowledged that that sentence is always true of everything at all times. This too shall pass away. This coronavirus shutdown is already beginning to pass away, and the extraordinary circumstances and the measures that we're taking as we begin to reopen will also eventually become things of the past. This too will pass. And you know, there are churches that meet in persecuted countries around the world today that have to take extraordinary measures on a daily basis in order to survive as a church. They meet underground. They have to break their congregations up into small groups that meet as enclaves in individual homes or abandoned buildings. And day to day and year to year, they exist that way, and they continue on as a church. If they can do that, we can certainly do what we're doing on a temporary basis. And you know, one thing is for certain, when we all get together in one big worship service on a Sunday sometime in the future, I think we're all, including myself, going to appreciate our togetherness in a way that we never did before. And you may be thinking, where's God in all of this? Well, let me tell you, God is at work in His church. God is doing extraordinary things in churches all over the world. Churches are learning to meet virtually, online, in Bible studies and worship services, similar to what we've done. I've heard of numerous churches that are having more people tune in to their videotaped or broadcast services online than who attended live on campus before they had to shut down. And that includes our own church, by the way. And so God is at work, and there'll be some things that will possibly become permanent as we deal with this shutdown and the after effects of it. But I believe most of those permanent changes are going to be for the best. I think we'll come out stronger for it. And I just want you to know that I and Andy and Gary and all of us on staff are praying for you. We love you. We look forward to seeing you again soon. If you need us for anything, you call us, and of course your deacon is available to help in any way that he can, your Sunday morning Bible study teacher as well. And I just wish you God's best as we move now into the stage of reawakening and coming back together. And may God bless you until we meet again. Thank you.